Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back for part 2 of our Building Your Chicken Coop series. Today we're going to be talking about building the frame for your coop. And the frame is actually what is going to give us its shape and allow us to add on the features we want to make it functional for us, such as a service door, like this one here. Now each coop is going to have its own specific set of challenges. This one I've built first is access from all three sides. So I'm able to put the service door here, egg bin on the other side, and so on. And so what you really have to start thinking about at this stage is, what do I want in my coop? How am I going to make it work, and how's it all going to fit? The new coop we're building for the young chicks is only going to be accessible from two sides. So you're going to see us make a different build so that we can accommodate all the needs of that coop. Let's go ahead and take a look inside the current one. I've just finished cleaning it out from its bedding, and I thought I'd show you the inside before we get started so you can see what this is all going to look like when we hit final assembly. Hello, Maribel. We'll see you later. This is the inside of my existing chicken coop. You can see the inside is all fully framed, and that's what gives it its strength and, for instance here, access to the nesting box. Maribel just really wants to stay here. And we can see here the frame not only holds the roosts, but gives us shape for the chicken's door. Okay, so that's what we're going to be working on with our new design. Okay, so now that we've taken a look inside the existing coop, let's talk about the new one and what we want in the new one. We know we need a few things. We need a sloped roof like this one has. We also know we need a place to collect the eggs, like here. And the nest box where the chickens are going to lay the eggs has to be a few stipulations on where it's going to be placed for them to actually lay their eggs in there for you. It needs to be lower than their roosts. It needs to be dark and private for them, so you don't want to have any windows opposite. So here I have a vent window above the roost on the same side so that the light doesn't shine down into it. So we need to mirror those things on our new base. And for convenience, this is where I walk in to enter my chicken coop, get some eggs, get some eggs. So I want it right here. That means the front is going to be facing in, so that's the chicken door side. That's a no-brainer. And the other side is going to be enclosed as well. So that means this back facing edge is going to be our service door access. So knowing that, I'm going to start drawing up some plans. And as I mentioned in my first video, I like to do that handwritten in my journal. So I'm going to show you the method that I use to start designing the frame. Okay, so here's my journal. This is what I've got so far. I know 3 of the 4 walls. And what I'm looking for when I put everything down here is not for it to be to scale, not for it to be exact, but I know that I want to start conceptualizing how many boards I'm going to need, what the lengths are, so I can start getting an idea of how many I need to buy, and so on and so forth. And then we're just going to start cutting it and assembling each one, and then we'll see how it all flows together. Now we're going to be assembling all 4 sides independently. That's the main part of what we're going to be looking at today. But for instance, here on my nesting box wall, I know that I want to have the top vent. So I know that I'm going to need to add a board, so I'm just going to draw that in. And I know that it's going to be the same length as the board below it, so I'm just going to mark it 21 inches. Now I know for that section of the wall, I'm going to need 1 board for here, 1 board for the nest box frame, and 1 board for mounting the actual nest box, so I'm going to need to cut 3 21-inch pieces. The last wall I need to design is the tall wall, which is going to be inside the run of the chicken coop. So I have noted here tall wall not accessible, and it's going to be 48 inches tall. So we'll draw those, very simple. Again, not trying to be perfect, just organized. So we'll label those 48 inches, 48 inches. Then we're going to give ourselves a bottom board. And we know that our base we built and installed last video is 48 inches by 48 inches. That's our whole plan. This is the cut everything in half chicken coop. So, but this board will obviously not be 48 inches. We're going to be discussing this multiple times throughout the video, but we have to take into account the two sides that are 2x3s. We're going to be using 2x3s, but they're not exactly 2 inches wide. You'll learn that. So instead of taking off 4 inches, we're going to take off 3 1/4. So we'll find that this will be probably 44 3/4 of an inch wide. Okay, we're going to do the same up top. We're going to go 10 inches down for this build, and we'll show you why when we install the roof boards. Just bear with me. Across there, this distance here is going to be 10 inches. Okay, and then we're going to need one framing support about in the middle. And we know by our same math, oops, we'll use the straight edge. This board is going to be 48 inches minus 10, 38, minus 3 1/4 inches. So we're looking at 34 3/4. Okay, so that's just an example. You're going to be custom building your own, but I find this helpful. And obviously you can get real complicated, use some drafting software on your computer, but I think an old-fashioned journal and a pencil works just fine. So let's get measuring and get cutting for this frame. All right, so now that we've got an idea of what we want to build and we basically have a grocery list for all the boards we need to cut, we're going to go ahead and measure and get all those boards cut out and start assembling each side one by one. I'm not going to spend the time to take your day and measure each board and cut it right in front of you, but we'll stop and show the assembly of each side, and then we're going to put it all together on this, which is the other half of the OSB board we cut for the base of the coop. So this is a good place to mock it up before we install it into the actual base. I do want to mention that I'm using 2x3s instead of 2x4s. They're plenty strong as studs for your framing on a chicken coop, and it saves you about $1 per board. So it's a good way to save some cash for your build. I'm going to go ahead and just start measuring and cutting, and then I'll be back to you for the assembly of the first wall. Alright, so I just finished cutting all the boards for assembling our first wall, the first framed wall. And since I have my instructions that I wrote out right here, I can figure out what goes where. So I have my measuring tape so I can double check. Alright, 42-inch boards, those go up and down. 44 3/4 go on the bottom. Lovely. And the top. Looks like everything's lining up to me. Should go right to the edge. I have my middle beam, which is 38 3/4. Yep. And this is the top vent window. And this will be the nest box right here. So now I'm just going to use the same deck screws we were using for the assembly of the base and screw everything in. I'm going to repeat that process for 3 more walls, and then we'll put it all up and we'll go over a few more of the measurements. Well, it's a couple hours later, and I finished measuring and cutting everything and putting all 4 sides together. And this is what I'm talking about. This is the front of the coop, the pitch roof, and this is where the chicken door will be. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to mock all this up on this 4x4 piece of plywood, so you can see what the final framing project is going to look like. Be right back. Okay, so I've bound all the corners with some zip ties, and this is a mock-up of our final frame. We are still going to get the roof on. However, you can see that this is the front, chicken doors here. This is the side that will be where we collect the eggs. So up here we're going to have a vent. Down here, eventually, once they're old enough, we're going to mount a nest box. This back section here will create a large service door so we can get in and clean the coop. Right in here. And this is just the tallest side that will be inside the run itself. So now we're going to get the roof frame on, and then that'll finish up for today. Now that we've got the 4 walls framed up and mocked up, we can start installing our roof framing. Our roof is going to be pitched 6 inches down over 4 feet. You can see with this first roof board on that it's plenty drastic for such a small structure, so everything should run off very easily. Now, this is probably the trickiest cut of this framing project. This is a bird's mouth cut. You can see it's not perfect. I'm not a trained carpenter, but I'm going to show you guys how to make this cut so that you can fit your roof boards on. I've already cut 2 of them, so we'll just get the last one set up, and I'm going to show you that process now. Okay, so first we're going to take our 2x3 and we're going to cut it in this 6-foot section. This is going to give us, for our 4-foot wide chicken coop, a foot of overhang on either side. And from there, we need to mark the point at which we're going to cut the beginning of this bird's mouth. We're actually going to measure 11.5 inches in, because we need to leave a little bit of room on the exterior for our paneling that'll be just slightly wider than the frame we built. So we mark that. Now, the next thing we need to mark is we need to mark 1.5 inches down from the top, and that's how much meat we're going to leave on the top of this cut. So 1.5 inches is a little more than half of this board. If you remember, they're not fully 3 inches. This one's about, well, close to 2.5, a little bit more. So these 2 lines are very important. Okay, so this is the point where we're going to start the cut. This is the point where we won't be cutting at this angle, but this is the point at which we want to stop our cut. Okay, we need to do a similar thing for the other end, but what we're going to do is we're just going to mark our 1.5 inch point. Okay, I'm going to mark that in a couple places so we have a reference. Okay, now I'll take you over to the coop frame and we'll show you the rest of the process. Okay, so now I've taken the board that we cut and I've placed it on top of our frame to get the correct slope. Now, I'm sure a better carpenter than I can do this without placing it up here with some method, but this is the easy way I use. And you're going to want to grab a framing square. If you don't have access to a framing square, you can shortcut and use something like a 90-degree angle bracket to mark it. This process is pretty simple. You just want to make sure you're accurate. So we're going to go on our upright. We're going to go to the point we marked for the 11.5 inches, and then we're going to go to the point we marked for the 1.5 inches. Right about there. We're going to get it right on. That looks good. We'll mark that angle. Okay. So that is the angle at which we're going to cut. Oops. Mark the vertical as well. So that's our angle. Do you see my original mark? It's not correct. If we would have cut that, this thing wouldn't be sitting correctly when we drop it down. And we're going to move over here and repeat the process. Okay. Here are my 1.5 inch marks. Here. Find the right point. Mark vertical and mark across. Like so. Okay, we're getting prepared to make our cuts, and we need to secure this board down since it's such a tricky cut. But I don't have any good clamps or a surface to work on, but I do have this base we made on the first video. So I'm just going to take a couple of deck screws and screw this board right down on top of it. And that should hold it nice and tight. Now, second thing is, we don't need to cut this entire length of this angle. We only need about 4.5 inches. So I'm going to measure out 4.5 inches. And I'll do the same for our back cut. So this whole piece is what we need to take out. And there's a couple ways to make this cut. The easiest, probably, and the lowest tech, although a little labor intensive, is to just use a handsaw. Get in here, make your cuts, and it'll be okay. But I broke my handsaw yesterday doing the same thing. So I'm going to show you a couple different ways. I happen to have a Sawzall, which is much better for this than a circular saw. And I'm going to show you how I'm going to use that. So I'm going to make the cut at 4.5 inches first. Right up to the line. And then I'm going to make another cut just about 1/2 inch down. And use a chisel and break that out. Now you could chisel this whole thing out once you've made a few cuts. That's another way that you could do it. Take our chisel, nice and lined up, take our hammer, one hit, it's out. But you can see that's not exactly even, so it's not going to give you the cleanest surface. So I'm going to take this the rest of the way out with the Sawzall. Again, you could just do this with a handsaw, and if I didn't want to make a run to the store, I probably wouldn't be using the Sawzall, but it's pretty quick. And there we have it. Alright everyone, that's going to finish up our part 2 video of this building a chicken coop trilogy. We've got our roof boards on and our frames up. A couple things I'm going to do in preparation for video number 3 is I'm going to take our 8-foot long pieces of side paneling, cut those in half and get those painted so we can be ahead of the game. We're also going to paint the roof boards. These are going to be a little exposed, so we're going to use the same waterproof seal that we did on the base in part 1 of these videos. If you're new, please subscribe, and as always, leave me a like and leave any questions you have in the comments below. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.